A judge called the case of Connor Land one of the strangest cases he's seen in 40 years on the bench. Welcome to True Crime 757, where we're talking about the stories we put on TV, but we're digging a little deeper. So Margot, tell us about how Connor Land got on your radar.
Well, I was in the courthouse, which is something that, we do frequently when we're looking through documents that have been filed from the police department. I found a search warrant that outlined some of these shocking allegations. And when we put it out to the public, they were shocked as well. So it was July of 2023. And the search warrant stated that Connor Land was working at Wegmans. He was in some capacity dealing with people when they were leaving the store. He was accused of taking an AirTag and giving it to, wrapping it in a thing of stickers, and then giving it to a 7-year-old girl as she was leaving the supermarket with her mother. The mother found it, was horrified, and she called police. So that's what started this whole investigation and this whole situation with this.
When you covered this, you said that in court, there was some previous behavior that was similar.
Yeah, so he said when he did this, the purpose why he decided to give the child the AirTag was because he was interested in the mother romantically, and that he described her, he had a letter that he wanted to give to her. So when he's being interviewed by police after getting arrested, you can hear him in court. There's the video of this arrest in the body camera video, and he's talking about wanting to give this mother the letter. The similar behavior was that he said that he had given another woman a letter as she was leaving Wegmans, similar letter to what he gave the mother. It says, I want to come to your house. I want to clean your house. I want to service you. I think you're a goddess. It had romantic undertones. He wanted to massage her feet and do all these things, and offered money for all of this. In the first incident, he said that the woman gave the letter back but kept the money that was in the envelope. But he said his whole purpose of this had nothing to do with the child, but more the mother and the romantic interest in her. And as we continue to talk about this, that is the underlying issue with all of these situations with him. It involves his interest in females. He's saying to make friends on a romantic level, but the victims in these cases are horrified and very scared of the way he's interacting with them.
The argument his defense used, I believe he has autism. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, he was 19 when this happened. He was diagnosed around that time after the arrest with autism, but had said that there had been, social issues prior to the diagnosis, And in court, over the several times that I've seen him, he has testified that he has a sex addiction, a porn addiction, compulsive disorders. His lawyer, Kristen Paulding, who I've interviewed several times, she successfully argued early in, some of these situations that he was autistic, and that he did this because of his autism, and that he is just trying to make friends, but there's something wrong in his brain where he does those making friends and then being creepy, which is a word he has described himself even in these situations. It doesn't click that the behavior is inappropriate. That is the argument that she has repeatedly made. There was the first incident that happened. He was a student at Christopher Newport University, and there was a young woman who was raising money, and he came up to the table. They had an encounter. He said he lost his keys, which was a made-up lie, and he was just trying to, talk to her in a certain way. And they looked for the keys. Well, fast forward a few hours, 9:00 at night, he winds up getting somehow into her dorm room, and he's waiting there for her. And her roommate calls her and is like, hey, this guy says that you guys are friends and he's waiting for you. And she's like, oh my God, I know who you're talking about. I dealt with him earlier today. This is super crazy. And she got the police involved with that situation. And that was in a few months before this AirTag situation happened. And that was in April of 2023. The AirTag happened in July of 2023.
Okay, so relatively only months apart then.
Right. So yeah, in that first situation, she got a protective order. I've interviewed this girl several times, another victim who describes being horrified and terrified. She was really scared of that he somehow got his way into her dorm room. So she got this protective order. There were issues, she said, with the court setting where the judge dismissed it based on, she said that there was, issues with the paperwork that wasn't completed or not. There was some anyway, though it all got dismissed, so there was nothing involved in it. But I just re-listened to the interview I did with her, and she did say that after all of this got dismissed, he also got in trouble for breaking the protective order because he was texting her father, trying to explain his side of what happened. And she said after it got dismissed, he sent her a text message with a middle finger emoji afterwards. So she was just, the whole thing, she was angry that the case got dismissed, and then she was upset by the fact that she says that he sent that emoji to her. So
Wow.
that was the first thing. Then this situation at the Wegmans.
I see. So he got her father's number and was texting her father.
Trying to give his side of like the story, saying, I was just trying to be friends, and doesn't understand the difference between what's appropriate behavior and what's not. And his attorney has continued to argue that on his behalf.
Okay, so nothing much came of that first case, but the second case that you were in court for, can you talk a little bit about that and specifically what the defense was arguing?
Yeah, so Kristen was arguing, his defense attorney, that the reason he behaves like this is because of his autism. There was a law that passed in 2020 that made it so if someone was arrested for a nonviolent misdemeanor, this new law could be used, which is what she was arguing. So what she said was the fact that he has autism. The law surrounds, if you are diagnosed with autism and you get in trouble for a nonviolent misdemeanor, they can use what's called a deferred finding. So even though, he was convicted of doing this, he took the stand and testified about it. The judge ruled in the end that his behavior, he shouldn't be in jail, and that he could be put on this deferred finding. He had to check in with the courts 3 or 4 times throughout the year. If he remained on good behavior, then the charge would get dismissed. And the charge itself was unlawful use of a tracking device, which is a misdemeanor, because of the AirTag, giving the child the AirTag. And both the Christopher Newport University student and the victim in that case, they both took the stand and talked about how they were so extremely horrified, terrified, and still impacted by what had happened. So they were both really disappointed that the judge did in fact rule that he could do this deferred finding and didn't face any jail time for the AirTag that he gave to the child.
Very uncomfortable. I think there was a lot of new information that came out about the case that made it that just more egregious of a crime he committed, and I wish he had been held more accountable than he was.
Were they taking an issue that this seemed to be a repeated behavior thing?
Not at the AirTag trial.
Okay.
It was creepy. Yes, it was weird. The judge did say what you opened with, saying this is one of the strangest cases I've ever seen on the bench. And that the behavior was clearly inappropriate. He had, his therapist got on the stand. He got on the stand talking about the treatment that he was getting, and that, his attorney argued this is because he's trying to make friends his whole life. He just wants friends. He would like a romantic relationship, but something in his brain doesn't allow him to understand the difference between what is appropriate communication and what is not appropriate.
So the judge's hope was that with that treatment and those check-ins, that would help him in the long run.
Yeah, and that was, he would avoid jail, so he could go out, and that's what he did for a year. He would check in with the judge, and everything was smooth sailing. Everything was good. He didn't get in trouble. As far as anyone knows, he didn't get in trouble. He didn't do anything that got the police involved, and he completed that punishment and was continuing to go to intense therapy, seeing group therapists, going to those addiction, the porn addiction and Sex Anonymous meetings and things like that, and getting various treatment for the behavior. So then it was dismissed. We covered it. We went to the hearing and heard how he wasn't going to be facing those charges. So that it got dismissed, and he was free to go, and everything was good at that point.
Well, now we know you were just in court for a separate case involving Connor Land, so it did not end there. And we'll get back to that after this break.
Your world changed in seconds, not by choice. But now you get to choose who fights for you. At Courseland Law.
Now, Margot, before the break, you were talking about what the judge gave him during the sentencing.
Yeah, and we had reported that this was a new law that was passed in 2020 for people with autism. And so this deferred finding, what it is it kind of, if someone is diagnosed with autism and they get in trouble and it's a nonviolent crime, they can do this with the deferred finding with whatever regulations the judge puts in place and can make the charge go away. And so his attorney had argued that he should qualify for this, and the judge agreed. And so what he had to do was go into the court and check in every few months repeatedly, go in front of the judge, talk about what he's been doing, review his behavior, review, the progress that's being made. And then after the year, that charge would be dismissed. Now, it's not in every deferred finding, it just ultimately gets dismissed, but that is what this particular judge ruled in his case. So it kind of gives people with autism like a chance to, get rid of something that maybe they got charged with because of their autism. And so that is, what went on in this case. And after a year, we had followed what happened in court, and everything was going smooth and everything was going good. He had all these, positive check-ins, and the judge was very happy with his behavior and what he was doing to improve his life. He signed up for I believe culinary school, and he signed up for different things and was trying to join groups for people with autism to try to help him with some of these communication and socialization issues. That's what he testified when we'd hear him talk in court.
So he successfully finishes that year-long period in about March of this year?
Yes, it was March.
And then what happened a few weeks later?
So it was less than 3 weeks later, and I was, it was a weekend. It was like a Saturday morning when I heard this. I think people had sent me some text messages overnight talking about, you're not going to believe who got arrested again. And when I looked at it, he got arrested. He got arrested again for stalking a woman. He was driving home and saw this woman on the highway in Norfolk. This originated in Norfolk. He saw her on the highway, spotted her. He said he liked what her bumper sticker said. So he followed her to a Dollar General, and then in court, they played the video of him following her around the store in the Dollar General, then getting in his car and then following her to her house. And then going up to the door, knocking on the door and asking and saying, hey, I want to be friends. I saw you. I want to be friends. And she's like super weirded out, like, go. They're calling the police to come. And she said that I think she saw him in the store, like following a little bit, like she recognized him, but then she was very scared, very like, what is going on? This is so weird. The police get involved and he leaves the house, right? He leaves, he goes away. And then a few hours later, he comes back, and her fiance is there at that time. And her fiance, had words with him and told him to leave. And then they called the police again. So after this happens, he then himself tracks down a police officer nearby, and he goes up to the police officer and starts describing what had happened in the encounter with her. And the police officer is asking questions, and we watched this body camera video in court, and it's kind of difficult to hear a little bit, but basically he says he had been in trouble before, but he was just trying to be friends with her. He wasn't arrested immediately. It was like a few days later is when he then got arrested for this. He took the stand, and his attorney is arguing again, you were going to hear a lot about friends, and that he is trying to make friends, and he doesn't understand his behavior, that he doesn't understand that this is, inappropriate. Well, and he got up there and took the stand and explained what was his side of the story. He doesn't mean it, and how he's trying to get all this treatment and help for this type of behavior. And this was a different judge, and this judge was not having these excuses.
Did he get bond?
He did not get bond. So when he got arrested, that was the first thing. And during his bond hearing, he asked about a deferred finding, or he asked about, this special law with, the autism, and the judge held him with no bond after this. Fearful of the behavior and fearful for the community. And so he's been in jail since his arrest in April. And, he's been in there, and he will continue to be in there after the trial with the outcome. The judge found him guilty of the stalking, and he was required to serve, I believe it was 275 days. However, because it's a misdemeanor, it might be less than that under, the rules and laws with Virginia. But people were glad that he is finally not being let go out of the jail. So in this third stalking case, the Christopher Newport situation got brought up, the AirTag situation got brought up, the similarities, the feelings of all three of and I've interviewed all three of those victims, not on camera, but I talked to them, and all three terrified, all three very traumatized and disturbed, and all three of them just kept saying, we just want no one to have to go through this. And so when the AirTag situation happened, that mother was she was so upset, and she's like, and then when the ruling came down with the deferred finding, I mean, they were just like flabbergasted, like, how can this behavior that keeps going on, you're just gonna let him out again when he's done it twice now that we have, and then it happened a third time. So that third judge was like, oh, and the family had previously, when he was up for bond, wanted to send him to go to like a specialized place, like a out of state, where they treat people, adults with autism, the compulsion disorder, the porn addiction stuff, like a specialized treatment for that. But at that point, the judge said no, he can do that when he gets out of jail from these charges, but I'm not going to rule that he can go to this program at this time.
Is there anything he has to do after jail time, or
he's not allowed to have any contact with the victims. He has to pay a fine, but it's not. I don't believe that going to that program is something that is being required by the courts, but it was said that he would be going there, after. His family and he himself seems to, when he's taking the stand and talking, he wants to not be in trouble. He repeatedly just says, like, he wants friends. He just wants friends and females, I think, female friends and female companionship, and just, so it is really sad to hear somebody say those words. If you're at the age he's in his 20s, that's the time when people are meeting and dating and things like that. But then you also, the victims are so horrified and terrified, like someone coming to your door, is in your dorm room, giving your child an AirTag. I mean, the behavior is just completely, not acceptable.
His attorney, was that the same one from the AirTag case?
Yes, this is the same attorney that he's had for the AirTag trial. Kristen Paulding, who has argued repeatedly saying anybody that knows Connerland knows that he has this issue and that he does not have any malice intent in his behavior, and that he is just trying to make friends, and he is just trying to meet people, female people that he's interested in.
But his autism really centers around the fact that he doesn't know how to create.
All three victims said that part of their concern is that this would happen in the future to more women. And I know that you have seen a lot of similar behaviors when going through search warrants related to stalking, unrelated to Connerland. So we'll get back to that after this break.
Your world changed in seconds, not by
Margot's work, a lot of it involves going through court documents multiple times a week, probably. There's something that you see often in cases relating to stalking. Can you kind of touch on that more?
Yeah, so I've been working in this this area for 10 years. And so I've looked through search warrants for the past 10 years. And what I've personally noticed is more of those unauthorized tracking device search warrants that police are investigating. I've noticed more of them because there are so many tracking devices that are out there today that weren't there, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So, I mean, the technology has just changed so significantly.
Those little AirTags, they're so tiny. You could slip it in a purse and I probably wouldn't find it in my purse, you know what I mean? And you, just to test how accurate this technology is, you actually did a little test run with an AirTag.
Yeah, we did. We here at WTKR, we bought a whole bunch of AirTags. We put them around and we watched to see where people were going and just how easy it is to really track somebody. It's very easy, and there's different things, not just the AirTags. You can go online and find all kinds of different devices that you can use to kind of see where somebody's going. I mean, I think people use them in divorce situations, or people use them when they're trying to track, someone they're in a romantic relationship with, it when they don't think they're being honest. People use them, I feel like, for criminal behavior when they're trying to follow people around. I mean, it's just the technology has changed so significantly with cameras and AirTags and things that it just makes it so much easier for, if somebody has ill intent with one, the intention is to help you find your luggage and help you find this and not have to look for this. And so it does make people's lives so much easier. But on the flip side, if you are using them, it is easy to, if you can put one on a car, put one in a bag, or put wherever, it has made it much easier to kind of track where people go.
I've only ever used an AirTag. I slip it in my luggage and just to make sure it made it to wherever I'm going. So I'm not really looking for like a specific location. When you did your test run, how accurate was it location-wise? Like, did it pinpoint where the person was?
Yes. I mean, you could see where they were. It took a bit for it to click in and start working. It took like a while for the AirTag to like pick it up.
Okay.
And then also, so we reached out to the companies who create them, and they sent us something back where it said, and it does, that I've seen in many cases, it'll pop up with a little message saying there's an AirTag that is, tracking you or connected to your thing. So that is what is supposed to happen with just AirTags. I mean, there's a bunch of different tracking devices that don't have that, but that's what, when we talk about the problem of people being stalked or they're being inappropriately used, that is what is supposed to happen. So people understand that there is something that is in their close vicinity that's monitoring what they're doing. But that obviously doesn't always work the way it's supposed to.
So if there is like an AirTag in your vicinity, typically you'd get a notification on your phone like, hey, this is near you.
There are sometimes with an AirTag that there should be, yes, like, and I believe it's something you have to turn on your phone, but it's supposed to turn it so click on. That is how they described it to us, like where you should know if somebody is doing that. But there's so many different tracking devices that is, that's just one of the many that people are using.
One last question. His family, did they speak in court, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, they did speak in court, and they talked about some of the issues that he's had, and his family has always been very supportive. They're always there, when he has to go to court. And I'm sure it's been really difficult for them, to deal with everything that they've had to deal with. And they just seem like a really supportive family that wants their son to, not face trouble and wants their son to get the right help. They have repeatedly talked about the ways in which, they want to send him to, now the next step would be this other place for them to, for him to get the specialized treatment and some of the issues that he's dealing with. But I feel bad for his parents. I feel like that's a really, it's a difficult thing. Anybody has a child that's struggling or getting in trouble with the law, that's when you just want what's best for them. So they did take the stand in the AirTag trial. They did not take the stand during the stalking stuff, but they, have tried to explain the issues that he's had since he was a kid.
Okay. Thanks for joining us for another episode of True Crime 757.